Welcome to Mighty Married Moms. Join us at our kitchen table twice a week as the Mighty Married Moms, Debbie, Linda, Wendy,
invite spectacular guests to weigh in on staying sexy, vibrant, and healthy,
building marriages with soul-satisfying connection, raising happy, healthy, successful kids. Conversations with Mighty Married Moms will bring you closer to the life you really want. Episode 108. Today's show is brought to you by Deborah C. Owen, Family and Life Coach at YouCanRaiseGreatKids.com. If you are tired of worrying about the choices your kid is making, or tired of the stress of constantly arguing with your kids, or them arguing with each other, then don't wait until you are truly desperate. Get the help you and your family need and deserve today. Connect with your kids with calm compassion. Call Deborah Owen at 978-835-4354. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mighty Married Moms. We are really excited to be able to introduce you today to DeAnn and Jared Jennette. They started Embrace Parent Coaching after struggling to create a non-punitive parenting plan for their children. Having one adopted child and one biological child who experienced medical trauma at an early age led them to learning about the impact of stress on brain development in children. Today, they work with families to embrace new parenting strategies to create connection from chaos within families with hidden challenges. And their website is embraceparentcoaching.com. DeAnn and Jared, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. So good to be with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. You know, you've gone through a lot of things that many parents deal with ADHD or deal with adoption or deal with, all of these things. But you've dealt with a bunch of them all at once. So love to hear in like a minute or so, what's your journey? How did you get from where you were to where you are right now?
Well, we adopted our oldest child at the age of 15 months, and he came from an orphanage in Haiti. And we walked into that fully understanding, having had training on traumatic backgrounds from adoption and orphanage life. And we completely embraced that and did a lot of connected attachment parenting to build that attachment at 15 months and to build his trust, which I would say took a good couple of years to really see him really becoming comfortable. And of course, it's a lifelong thing too, and there's the ongoing stuff. But for the most part, after the first couple of years, we saw pretty typical 3-year-old at that point. And so then we were having a biological child and thought, oh goodness, this will be just so easy, after adopting. So yes, naive. And we walk into parenthood thinking that we're expecting one thing, and then when our youngest was born, he actually had a swallow dysfunction at birth. And so he was not able to feed like typical kids, although it took us about 4 months to really get a diagnosis, or at least an understanding from the doctors, because we were forcing him to feed, and because they told me just feed him on a schedule. The child never wanted to eat, never, which was not typical. But because he was gaining weight, the pediatricians would kind of laugh at me and say, okay. What we found out was that he was aspirating. And every time he fed, and he ended up on an NG tube for about 4.5 months, which did cause a lot of medical trauma.
Wow.
Just being on that tube. And then he was on a G tube for another year after that. And it wasn't until several years later that we really were able to put the pieces together and realize that he had a sensory integration disorder and also a developmental disorder that causes some low muscle tone and coordination issues. And so once we put that all together, then of course ADHD is very commonly associated with those issues too. And so we got that diagnosis a couple years after that. And so, so this is going to be so easy went to, some challenges for us.
Yeah. That's, that is an interesting story. And as I said, a lot of parents deal with one or two of those issues, but you had a lot all at once to deal with.
Right.
And what did you use kind of as the basis for staying up and positive as you were dealing with those challenges on a daily basis?
You're presuming they did.
Yeah.
I was going to say, well,
Lots of alcohol, chocolate.
No. We, it was actually pretty challenging. That's a really good question because at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom and I was in a very rural area, several hours away from our family. And most of the moms at that time in that area were working moms. And so I felt very, very alone. And I have the privilege of Jared had a flexible job so that he could come home at a moment's notice to help. But it was very challenging. And I would say to stay up and positive at the time, it was hard. I don't know that I did because we didn't have a diagnosis at that point. They kept saying, try this and it'll be fine. And so I would believe them and then go home and to be utterly disappointed again. And so once we finally got the diagnosis and everything calmed down, I actually struggled a great deal with depression and had to get help for that because I had been at such a level of intensity, all the time. I would say he was choking a lot, like as a baby, if he found like a little piece of scrap paper from my other 3-year-old on the floor, he could choke and it would cause his airway to be blocked off. And so we kind of lived in this high state of alert for several years. And that really, I'm sure you understand that kind of stress level then does it's difficult on the parents as well. And so, we've all had to deal with stress. And I think that we have many more ways of staying positive now than I did at that particular time because we've had to learn.
So what would you recommend for parents who are struggling with their kids, whatever that struggle, whatever that struggle might be? What are some tips that you've garnered that you can share with us?
Well, I think one is to give yourself a lot of grace, cut yourself a lot of slack and recognize that the burden that we put on ourselves as parents, especially parents with kids with challenges, is we expect to get it perfect all the time. And so giving yourself the grace to acknowledge when it's not going well, and to give and I think when we do that for ourselves, it makes it easier for us to offer that to our kids. And so the more grace that I offer myself, the more that, being a married couple, the more that we offer it to each other, the more then that we are able to give that and extend empathy, grace or empathy to our kid to recognize that he's not, he's having a bad day, or he's, there are triggers that have set him off. And the more that I'm able to do that for myself, the easier that is to extend that to other people. So I think that's one of the big things, is just be realistic about some stuff. And I'd also say, I think the big thing for us was deciding what were the goals or what was most important. So, the house may be a mess for a while because he's got, at the time it was, feeding was a chore. I mean, it literally it consumed our lives from the moment he woke up until after he was asleep even.
Wow.
Those times. And I think the more that we could then prioritize and say the most important thing is this, and that's kind of carried on as he's gotten better. I mean, he's fine. You wouldn't really notice much about him, but we've had to recognize what are the priorities now. Now so when he's having a meltdown, the priority isn't just to get him in line. The priority is to offer empathy and to help him identify what are the underlying problems that are causing the meltdown.
One of the things I want to add is that I had to learn to choose to not live in fear. I think as parents, we always imagine as our child is going through any kind of struggle, what is their future going to be like?
Yeah.
I'm particularly a dreamer, and I'm always thinking about the future. I always have been. It's been a strength for me, but it's also been a weakness for me, and that I have had difficulty in just concentrating in the moment. And since we have really worked on that and agreed, we're not going to live in fear. We're going to parent for the long term, but also just concentrate in the moment. I don't have to fix the worries of the future. I can just connect and care for my children right here and now in the way that is best for them. And that has been a huge relief to know that I can't control the future, and it's not going to do me any good to worry. So I'm just really focusing on enjoying our children. I think the first few years it was hard for me to enjoy them. And so now enjoying them, despite and with all the challenges, we even in the middle of a meltdown or right after a meltdown, sometimes we enjoy the enthusiasm and
it's all in how you frame it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, right on.
And I think with maturity and growth and support, like I now am in a place where we live in a different location, and there are I have lots of other moms that I can connect with, and we have lots of other parents. Also having Jared on the same page with me, like at first I think it's very difficult for dads. We've had this discussion a lot, dads, to accept that there might be an issue with your child. And so, getting to the place where, we're both in agreement of where our kids are and how we want to parent has been huge. And that's only been in the last couple of years since we've really dug into non-punitive, brain-based parenting, that we're really on the same page and doing similar things. And even if one of us has a bad day, the other one can kind of pick up. And that's really been so nice for us.
Yeah. So you actually are taking your personal experience and your personal learning curve, and you said other people need to know how to do this, and you created. Is it a parent coaching work, or what is it that you both do? And are you doing it full time, both, or one, or?
Yeah.
I'd love to know more about
we did, yeah. When we started sharing our story with parents, and it could be anything from just sitting around the soccer field during practice to things at school, whatever it was. As we started to listen to parents and hear what was going on in them, we began to recognize there were a lot of parents struggling with some of the same things we were, behavior issues that we could go, yep, been there, to the more you listen, then you're sensitive to certain keywords or experiences, and you go, oh yeah, yeah. And so we began to realize that parents really needed, they were looking for this non-punitive, and the other quality that we really began to recognize is that it's brain-based. That we began to learn the neurology and the neuropsychology of what's going on in our kid, why the meltdown was happening. We didn't just want to create, say behaviorally, when you do this, here's the consequence. We began to realize that there's something deeper going on. So we started this. We both do this. We have part-time jobs on the side. Yeah. I still work as a pastor part-time, and DeAnn works in doing parent education. So she works with parents as in a school system part-time, and then we've really kind of dedicated our free time, our lives to this.
Yeah. When we first moved up to this area from the very rural area we were in, I found a job as a parent educator. When I started looking at the qualifications, I thought, well, most of my qualifications come from my real life experience. I do have a degree in education, but most of my early childhood development stuff comes from everyday experiences. And so I got a job based on that. And I've been doing that for the last 7 years now. I work with a school system, birth to 5. And so parents of all kinds, and, kids who have atypical neurology and kids with typical neurology. And what we found was that the stuff that we were applying here at home, when I worked with my parents, it worked there too with all kids and all families. And that was very exciting to me, especially when I was really helping parents. I remember, the 2-year-old tantrum phase, and really helping them learn how not to get involved in that and still help their child in the middle of that. That was really exciting. Jared also spent a year with a part-time position working as a post-adoption service coordinator. And so he was working with families right after adoption. And so we decided to transition from that into our own part-time business at this point. So we're hoping.
I'm curious. I would love to have you dive in a little bit more to what parts of the brain neurology you really teach families in terms of learning how to relate to their kids when they're being challenging.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You want to dive in?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start. So one of the things that we began to learn was about the amygdala and its response to threat. And so beginning to realize that for a lot of kids, that meltdown was coming from more of a protection phase. So that when a child's feeling threatened, and we can't say, well, you're not threatened, that you need to calm down. It's really about understanding it from the child's perspective. So it's understanding that when a child feels threatened, the amygdala kicks in and it starts pumping out the cortisol. Mm-hmm. And cortisol really ends up blocking them from that thinking part of their brain. And when we explain that to parents, there is that light bulb that goes off of going, oh, that's why my kid, when I say calm down, they can't, or when, why. And it was an aha moment for me to realize things like, that blocks off the part of the brain that frontal lobe where cause and effect comes in. So if a kid is melting down and we're trying to teach them the typical behavioral approach of, because you threw a toy, you're in timeout, their brain can't register that. They can't receive that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So as we begin to learn about that, and we learn about the power of empathy and helping the brain release oxytocin to calm down that fight, flight, or freeze response, and get that thinking brain engaged again. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that we really teach our parents, is that when we try and meet our child's force in their meltdown with our own force, it really is counterproductive. It creates more cortisol, which creates more stress, which blocks the thinking part of the brain. And for kids that have experienced trauma early in their childhood, either through abuse, neglect, or in our child's case, it was medical trauma that he experienced. Mm-hmm. That cortisol builds up in their brain. And so the more that we can create empathy, the more we allow that to kind of ebb back, and more thinking part of their brain is engaged again.
And when you think about a child with ADHD or sensory integration issues as well, the ability for the synapses to be able to connect at the speed that is typical has been slowed down. So, they're
in ADHD.
Yes.
The condition of ADHD, there's a slowness from synaptic.
No.
Yes.
Got it.
Which is why typically one of the first lines of treatment is a stimulant, because by actually speeding up the communication, the neurotransmitters between the synapses, then they are able to actually process and focus in. So that's exactly what's happening. And we kind of think of it as the opposite because of ADHD. We see the hyperactivity. But actually, they're trying to speed their brain up. That's what they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. So when we think about that, their difficulty with processing, so that just exacerbates what we're already talking about that's typical. Mm-hmm. So if a child is misbehaving and they're upset because we have set the boundary there and they're not real happy with that boundary, and they let us know that, and their brain begins pumping that cortisol, it only dampens their ability to think and to problem solve. And so we're really not solving any problems, and we're not teaching them to think. In fact, in kids who come from traumatic backgrounds, they've done the most recent neuroscience shows us that they actually have fewer connections. There is less gray matter in a child that has suffered from traumatic background.
I think I remember reading that recently. Yeah.
Really? That's pretty impressive.
And so if we are only trying to do behavioral intervention with these children, we're not building connections. And that's what we talk about when I said we're parenting for the long haul. that's what I mean by that, but then focusing in the moment, because parenting for the long haul is building more gray matter, building more connections. And how do you do that? You do that by helping them access that prefrontal cortex and helping them make connections from their emotions to that area. But you can't do that when everybody's angry and upset.
Right.
And that's what punitive discipline can lead to.
Right.
I love the way you describe that. I mean, I've read a lot of that stuff, and I teach a lot of that stuff to my clients as well. But you've really given it a good synopsis of why the punitive measures of raising kids are really ineffective.
Yeah.
Right. A biological reason for why it's ineffective. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we tell our parents, we're raising kids in a time period where when they're adults, they will have problems to solve that don't yet exist. And they'll have to figure out how to solve them with technology that hasn't been invented yet. And when you think about that, if we're not teaching our children to be problem solvers themselves, we're really not teaching them the skills that they need for the future. And so while we talk about punitive discipline really working in, when it was really the Industrial Revolution, and we were very much focused on, factory work and
we needed, the industrial age really said that we need you to be a good cog in a wheel.
Right.
Yeah. So behaviorism does that. It says you get, you be a good cog, you'll get a reward. You be a bad cog, you get discipline.
Yeah.
Right.
And now in the information age, we really are about, when you talk to employers, the number one thing there's two major characteristics that they are looking for in employees. Can you solve problems, and can you work collaboratively?
Right.
Yes.
Those are the skills that we are talking to parents about teaching their kids is how do you identify and solve your problems, but how do you do that as parent and child together? That's really the goal is that, it's not just me as a parent saying, here's your problem and here's how we're going to solve it, but it's allowing the child to participate in naming the problem. Because even with our kid, we may think, there are times I go in and I'm like, I know this problem. And then when I really listen to him and I give him the space to really talk, I'm not even there yet. He'll say, no, this is really what's going on, because now, and then I go, oh, let's solve that problem. Then the behavior changes.
Right.
But if all I want to do is address behavior, then I'm just trying to make him a good cog, and I'm not really about helping him learn how to identify and solve problems collaboratively.
Exactly. Yeah, I love to hear you say that, and that people like you and I, because I come from the same mold, and all of my training is the same thing, and we need to be out there more because there's still so many people. I can't tell you how many times on Facebook, I'll see some other saying, oh, my kid's driving me crazy, and then there will be 15 people saying, give him a lesson, tell him who's boss.
Oh my goodness.
All
those videos of people shaving their children's heads, shame them. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And people go, yeah, you go. I'm like, oh my Lord.
People just don't realize that.
And people saying that their child needs a disciplinary teacher at school. Yeah, I'm glad my son got the tough teacher because he needs discipline. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Right.
Well, I work in a school system too, and it's really challenging for the teachers because the typical method of discipline within the classroom is punitive discipline. And, that's the way they're taught. They're actually evaluated on that. I know there are teachers that would love something different, but they don't, so this is no way negative about teachers. It's just that this is part of our culture. And so even, I have teachers who are like, I want something different, but I don't know. And then they implement with children with particular challenges what we call a behavior modification plan. And they said, I don't understand. It's not working, and they don't know what to do. And so, we really think that as we train parents and hopefully some teachers too, that we can really make a difference in how we're helping our society as a whole. I mean, right now, we talk about this pipeline from schools to prisons. And, this doesn't just end as children. Punitive issues happen throughout the lifespan. And a lot of our people in prisons are the kids that we're talking about. ADHD or sensory integration issues or traumatic backgrounds. And if we don't find a new way of helping these kids, we're just going to continue to feed into that pipeline.
Right.
Yeah.
We're bypassing that whole, like you say, the integration, the wholeness of the way we created to be and created to work. And we're just bypassing that whole highway. This reminds me of something. A few years ago, I was working at Tufts School of Medicine in a chronic pain program. And one of the articles that I had a chance to write was the difference between how men experience pain, chronic pain or pain, and how women experience pain. And I bet, I'll give you the bottom line. Most people, if you were to query them, they'd say, oh, women can tolerate much higher levels of pain than men. But it's actually not true. And that's more, see, we're all saying, because we would have assumed that childbirth and when a guy has a cold, it's, well, the whole world's coming to an end. All those, but actually in terms of pain, women actually cry uncle sooner and louder than men do. And one of the theories that I don't know that it's been proven yet, but one of the really strong theories on that was very interesting to me was because women, we are social beings and we require a social world. So when you scream and you say, ow, it hurts, you're signaling your tribe, your people, I need some help. So what I heard when you were talking about the child, the 2-year-old having a fit, is maybe there's some signaling going on here, like, I am not able to do this. My world, my people group, whoever's out there listening to me scream and cry and pitch a fit, I need some help. And the help is a hug to bring up the oxytocin and bring down the cortisol. I wonder if there's something there that is a sociological response to how to be in social, how to be a humanoid, how to be a social animal.
I think that relates to some of Dr. Dan Siegel's work in mindfulness, where he one of the things that he says is we create our identity, our person, our mind, essentially who we are through relationship, through connection, through interconnectedness. And one of the things we talk about with parents is we've misunderstood one of the goals of parenting to be creating our kids to be independent. And what we really talk about, what we want to encourage parents to understand is, no, it's about creating interdependence, that it's not about codependence. That's a whole other, the other end of the spectrum there. But to talk about interdependence, that we create, that part of my identity, a large part of my identity is that, I'm most fully who I am when I'm in relationship with my wife, with my kids, with my friends. All of those things help me to be who I am. And so that's kind of gets to some of what you're saying there, that how we deal with our problems then is in an interconnected way.
Is it a dependent way, in a good way, not that codependent way, but there's function that cry for help. Literally, we need the tribe. We need everybody to be together and helping one another. You said you're a pastor. There's this whole thing of, the body that says sometimes I'm not the hand.
Yeah, yes, right.
I need the foot to get me to go places. Sometimes I need the ear, and I'm not the whole body. I'm my part of it, but we're interdependent. It's really a really fascinating.
Right on.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That is very powerful stuff. And it reminds me of a friend that I have who's from Africa who talks about, you Americans, I don't understand you. Your definition of success is when you no longer need your neighbor. And, to realize that that's kind of an American construct, that to be independent, completely successful is to be completely independent of other people. And I think that's why we are seeing, I just read just last week that anxiety is now the #1 mental health issue for young people.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And so, no wonder we're anxious. We think that we have to do it, and we have to do it all by ourselves. And even the way we parent, that's the way you need to.
Well, our schools are set up that way.
Yep.
There's no collaboration in school. Not really. Your grade is your grade.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
It's
Right,
true.
right.
Yeah.
And the push for standardized testing and how you do on that test only feeds into
Oh, I
that.
hate those tests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what?
Me too. I hate them.
I think almost everybody does.
I know. Everybody does.
I
They're
applied
still
for
there.
a part-time job a couple of weeks ago, and I had 2 interviews. I had an interview with the boss, and then crickets, nothing.
Hmm.
And then I said, you know why I didn't get that job? Because it was a job standing up teaching people how to do their SATs and their ACTs. And my internal clock was like, I don't teach to test, but I would have been standing up teaching to test all day long. And somehow I was protected from
Going there.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
totally.
I hate to say this, but we are out of time.
We are. I'm sick of that.
So that clock, I know.
Throw that clock away.
So before we go away, there are 2 things I'd like to do. One is I want to give you a chance to tell everybody where to find you. But secondly, and we'll do this first actually, is to just kind of pull a couple of things together so people have something that they can take away. So it sounds to me, and I'd love to have you add into this, one thing is to recognize that when your child is having a temper tantrum, it's not because they're, just freaking out on purpose. It's because they're having an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can elaborate on this a little bit. Give us 1 or 2 tips that we can take out of this.
Yeah.
What we have learned is that any kind of meltdown, behavior problem, whatever you want to call it, is typically a sign that there's something else going on.
Mm-hmm.
It can be that there is a problem that they can't identify, or that they have identified but they haven't. In some cases, that they haven't built the trust in you that they can come and really share that and trust that you're not going to freak out and that you're really just going to listen and help them solve that problem. So. It really, so that's one of the big things, is to say those behaviors are let them be a sign. Don't just focus on, my child is going to forever be a temper tantrum thrower, but let that be a sign that there's something deeper going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to jump off of that is that empathy is the antidote. It really is. When we empathize with anyone, especially our children, we connect in a way where a person feels felt. Feltness, like, oh, you get me.
You see me. You understand me. Yeah.
You understand me. You get me. When that that builds a connection like nothing else. And so that will automatically release the oxytocin, build connection, and enable both of you to think and to figure out how to solve the problem.
Excellent. Excellent.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's really great. Thank you so much. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and anything that you have to offer so that we can let people connect with you some more.
You can connect with us at embraceparentcoaching.com. We also are on Twitter at Embrace Parent and Facebook, Embrace Parent Coaching. And you can, if you go to our website, right on the front page, you'll see we have a free ebook about dealing with meltdowns. And so 10 strategies to help you with your child's meltdowns. And so it will help you with a lot of the things that we've just been talking about. Jared, do you have anything to add?
No, I think a lot of times we get questions about how do I deal with the meltdown, and this really kind of lays the foundation for what we've been talking about, of understanding the brain and understanding the power of empathy, and also the power of self-care in the middle of that. Look, I mean, we've been doing this for years. We still get stressed out when our kid's having a meltdown. We are fortunate that we can tag team, and there are times when I'm just like, I am fed up and I need to walk away, and DeAnn can step in, and vice versa.
Great.
So self-care is part of that too. So yeah, the book is a great way of doing that.
And then if you follow us on Twitter, you also can see us. We scope 5 days a week on Periscope. And so if you follow us on Twitter, you'll see those feeds come up.
Great.
Awesome.
Excellent. Good.
All right.
Great.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for being with the Mighty Married Moms. We were just talking with DeAnn and Jared Jennette, and we are there from embraceparentcoaching.com. And my name again is Debbie Owen from youcanraisegreatkids.com.
And I'm Linda Tighe from All Well Breaks Loose.
And I'm Wendy Williams from connectagain.org.
And we thank you for being with Mighty Married Moms. Please go to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. That would help us so much. And share this show with your family and friends.
You want to.
Yeah, you want to. And if you got something out of it, we would love to have you share. So thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you for joining us for this episode of Mighty Married Moms. Tune in twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays to meet fascinating and inspiring guests who will help you create the life you've always wanted.
You can find these episodes and special gifts just for you at mightymarriedmoms.com, as well as a link to our Facebook community,
where we continue the conversation around the kitchen table. Please also help share the love by leaving a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.